The first shovel struck something soft. It was a breezy spring afternoon in Claremont, Oregon, and 48-year-old Ethan Blake was doing what he'd put off for 2 years, digging out the old peach tree stump in his new backyard. He and his wife had just moved into the quiet suburban home to start fresh. No more city noise. No more shadows from his past. But something was buried just beneath the surface, and it wasn't a root. Ethan knelt, brushing away dirt until his hand closed around a small, fabric body. It was a doll. Once pink, now dirted and torn, the fabric had faded almost to gray. But the most chilling detail was the dried blood smeared across its face. Ethan dropped it instantly. And then he saw it, a tiny heart-shaped charm still clinging to the doll's wrist, engraved with the name Maddie. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He typed the name into Google, more from paranoia than anything else. Maddie Bell, 5, went missing from Claremont in 2003. Last seen in her front yard playing with her favorite doll. Never found. Case remains open. The doll in the article photo was identical to the one in his garage. And Ethan knew exactly what he had to do. He took the doll to the police. Detective Rachel Mendez, who was only a rookie during the original investigation, now led the cold case unit. She stared at the doll in silence for nearly 2 minutes before speaking. This isn't just a doll. This is evidence that someone buried something they were never supposed to find. The blood was tested. It matched Maddie's DNA, still stored in the national database. Ethan's backyard became a crime scene overnight. Cadaver dogs were brought in. Forensics combed every inch. Then they found it. A small skeletal hand just 10 feet from where the doll was buried. Maddie's parents, Tom and Jeanette Bell, were contacted. They hadn't lived in Claremont in years. The pain had driven them away. When Jeanette saw the doll, she collapsed. She never went anywhere without it. Whoever took her knew that. But what chilled them even more was this. The house Ethan now lived in, it once belonged to a retired teacher named William Greaves. A quiet, lonely man, now dead. As detectives searched the property, they uncovered strange alterations in the basement. A section of the floor sounded hollow. Underneath was a crawl space. Inside were old photo slides, Polaroids of children at play, and one image that froze them all. Maddie, clearly distressed, holding her doll. Date stamped, May 4th, 2003, the day she disappeared. Cross-referencing missing child reports, Mendez found a disturbing thread for disappearances within 40 miles of Claremont over 15 years. All girls. All between ages 5 and 7. And in each case, a toy was the last known object the child was seen with. Ethan realized something that chilled him to his core. The peach tree he'd removed, it wasn't original to the backyard. It had been planted in 2004, 1 year after Maddie vanished. Neighbors described William Greaves as quiet, polite, and obsessed with gardening. He was also a former drama teacher at a local elementary school. Retired suddenly in 2004. Never married. No children. But he had dozens of VHS tapes stored in the attic. And every one was labeled with a child's name. Some were missing. One was labeled Maddie 03 and another Abigail 98. Sometimes, evil doesn't look like a monster. It wears a cardigan. It smiles politely. It gives you extra candy on Halloween. The tragedy wasn't just what happened to Maddie. It was that no one questioned the man who lived alone next to a school for 3 decades. Tom Bell said it best. We kept searching the world for her, but she was right next door. The lesson: never ignore what makes your skin crawl. Silence is the loudest accomplice. The case seemed solved, until a forensic analyst called Detective Mendez days later. The blood on Maddie's doll, it wasn't just hers. It was mixed with another child's, one that doesn't match any known missing person in the system. And carved faintly on the wooden baseboard in the crawlspace, newly discovered. Find the others. Detective Rachel Mendez stood in the basement crawlspace, her flashlight fixed on the carved words, "Find the others." She traced the groove with a gloved hand, chilled not by the temperature, but by the implication. There were more children, and maybe not all were accounted for. Forensics uncovered a false wall in the crawlspace. Behind it, an old wooden trunk sealed with nails. Inside were 4 tattered toys, wrapped in child-sized clothes. One sweater had a name tag, Abby. Mendez turned to her team. We need to cross-reference school rosters from the late 90s through 2005. Every girl who went missing. They reopened the files of Abigail Reyes, vanished 1998, age 6. Leah Price, vanished 2000, age 5. Nora Simmons, vanished 1995, age 7. Each file eerily resembled Maddie's case. Each last seen within miles of Greaves' house. Mendez finally viewed one of the recovered VHS tapes. The footage was grainy, time-stamped 2003. It showed a young girl playing with a doll in a basement. A voice behind the camera said, "Let's do your lines again, sweetheart. Just like we practiced." The girl cried. The camera zoomed in on the doll. It was Maddie. Her terror was undeniable. The press swarmed the Claremont Police Department as Mendez held a televised conference. "We are investigating this case as a serial child abduction and potential homicide case spanning nearly 2 decades. We urge families with missing children in the area to contact us." Within 24 hours, 2 calls came in. One from Marie Eldridge, whose 5-year-old cousin disappeared in 1996. The child was never reported missing because her guardians claimed she was given up for adoption. The other call shook Mendez to her core. A man claimed he had been one of Greaves' students in the 90s. He had a basement theater, said it was just for us. But he made us rehearse plays, weird ones. Some girls never came back after rehearsal. Digging through school archives, detectives uncovered a hidden disciplinary file from Greaves' teaching years. 10 students listed, 6 girls. 3 of those names matched known missing children. The remaining 3, one had changed her name after being adopted. Another had committed suicide in 2010. The third was alive, living in a shelter across state lines. Her name was Emily Voss. Emily trembled as she described a hidden room under Greaves' basement. A trapdoor, locked from above. He called it the stage. Said we had to earn our lines. But it wasn't acting. It was pretending to be his family. He told us if we ever told anyone, he'd bury us like the others, and plant roses above. Emily showed detectives an old burn scar on her wrist. That was my punishment for trying to escape. Monsters don't always hide in the dark. Sometimes they rehearse lines, smile at parents, and hide trauma beneath layers of normalcy. The system failed these girls. Society turned a blind eye. But now, with the truth unearthing itself, one voice at a time, the truth finally has its stage. While cataloging the items found in Greaves' crawlspace, a forensic analyst opens a locked diary. Inside, dated in neat handwriting, "She was too smart. Had to move her. Built the second box just for her." The diary ends with a crudely drawn map, marked with an X, just outside town, labeled "Final Scene." The morning air was sharp as Mendez and her team stood before a patch of overgrown forest on the outskirts of Claremont, following the crude map found in Greaves' diary. The X marked a clearing behind what used to be an old summer theater camp, shut down in the late 90s. Few even remembered it existed. The soil had sunken in places, almost unnaturally. Ground-penetrating radar shows irregularities beneath, one of the forensic techs noted. Within an hour, shovels turned dirt, and then the stench hit them first. Buried beneath 3 feet of soil was a reinforced wooden box. Inside lay the remains of a small child, curled up with a teddy bear. Another toy. DNA later confirmed it was Leah Price, missing since 2000. But that wasn't all. A second smaller box was found nearby. This one empty, except for a hair ribbon and a photo of Emily Voss. A note was taped inside. She tried, almost made it. The others wouldn't listen. The discovery ignited a firestorm. A full investigation into William Greaves' teaching history, financials, and property transactions uncovered shocking ties. He had purchased 4 remote plots of land over 2 decades. Each location correlated with either a missing girl or an unidentified victim. With Emily Voss's cooperation, a team began documenting the abuse network Greaves operated. He hadn't acted entirely alone. His former assistant director at the summer theater camp, Alan Miles, had suddenly vanished in 2006. A nationwide manhunt began, and the FBI got involved. Emily Voss became the public face of the survivors. In a televised statement, she said, "He thought burying us would silence the truth. But truth doesn't rot. It rises." Other survivors began stepping forward, including one woman now in her 30s who remembered being told to act like the doll during rehearsals. These weren't just kidnappings. They were choreographed crimes, filmed and staged to satisfy a sick narrative. Every tape found in Greaves' attic was analyzed. Most were irreparably damaged. But a few showed vital details, not just Greaves, but others in the background. One man, always blurred, always distant, appeared in 5 different recordings. Facial recognition flagged him as Alan Miles. He had changed his name and was working as a middle school counselor in Colorado. He was arrested without incident. Inside his home, dolls. Over 100. Each labeled with a name. Some not even known to investigators yet. Final lesson. The case rocked the entire state. Background checks were reformed. Mandatory psychological evaluations for youth workers were passed. Memorials were built in honor of the missing girls. Ethan Blake, the man who discovered the doll, was invited to speak at a national child safety conference. "I dug up a doll. I never thought I was digging up history." And Detective Rachel Mendez? She received national honors. But she couldn't shake one thought. How many others were never found at all? Life lesson. Evil doesn't always leave. Sometimes it lingers in the places we rebuild, waiting in roots and crawl spaces. It takes courage to dig deeper, in soil, in truth, and in memory. And sometimes, the smallest things, like a doll, carry the weight of unspeakable stories. Never dismiss the whispers of a forgotten past. They may be crying to be heard. Families once left in agony now had closure. The truth had finally taken center stage. And this time, the audience was the world.